you. Okay. Welcome back. Here we are. This is Vexing Cat once again. We are going to be returning to the fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm. I am excited again to be here. It's been a few days. Had an amazing D&D campaign on Sunday, which I need to recap with Kitten sometime this week, depending on what her schedule is. And for those of you that are watching, I'm very happy to have you here. Give me a second. Let me grab this real quick. Close out of that. There we go. So, once again, we're returning to the fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm. I am still trying to figure out some of my formatting with some stuff. I feel like I'm almost there. Like, I'm getting really, really close to having things kind of dialed in. Um, like my cute little tiger. I got him to tell me where I am on how many followers I have. And I have these beautiful little wood frames that I have that are very consistent and I can put on all 4 seasons. And then now I have my PNG that I really love by Seagenary. So I'm almost there. I feel like I've almost got it figured out. So I appreciate you guys sticking around and listening to me as I'm rambling, as I'm trying to figure out where my place is and how I'm going to show off these phenomenal classic books and show off all of the literary stories and poetry that I love. Uh, as far as next Sunday, so today, Friday, we're going to wrap up Brothers Grimm. And then on Sunday, I will be doing a Sea of Thieves stream with my friend Slightly Stupid Bear, Valis, and Pocket Salami. So, people that I have known and really care about for a number of years. So, it's it's really nice to see us all kind of getting back together for some pirating. So, yeah, look forward to that at my usual time on 6 p.m. EDT on Sunday. So, if you are all buckled in or, wrapped up in a blanket and ready to start listening, let's get cooking. There is a story before Ashenputtel, but I feel it has tones that are not appropriate for the direction that I am using in the stream. So I'm going to just skip it. And if you want to know what it is, just message me and I can DM you what the title was, but it's not appropriate. So today I have a protein coffee drink, a mango chili water drink, and for my snack today, I have Ranger's chocolate. Here, let me grab a picture of that. The espresso flavor of chocolate. So extra chocolate and extra coffee today. So I have had their bars before. They have a couple of different flavors that I really like. Some single origin chocolates, classic dark, Coblone, which is a Philippines based chocolate. They're dark chocolates. A Mayan, which has got some heat in it, but they're always out of. I don't know why. I have not tried their maple chocolate. I want to. It's on my list. And then I don't know anything about Nord yet. But like I said, lots of flavors. So I'll get around to trying them all eventually. So, ooh, spicy pickles. Fantastic. Well, welcome back, Teeth. Excited to have you here. Let's see. Fairy Tales of the Brothers Grimm. Ashenputtel. The wife of a rich man fell ill, and when she felt that she was nearing her end, she called her only daughter to her bedside and said, "Dear child, continue devout and good, then God will always help you, and I will look down upon you from heaven and watch over you." Thereupon she closed her eyes and breathed her last. The maiden went to her mother's grave every day and wept, and she continued to be devout and good. When the winter came, the snow spread a white covering on the grave, and when the sun of spring had unveiled it again, the husband took another wife. The new wife brought home with her 2 daughters, who were fair and beautiful to look upon, but base and black at heart. They began a sad time, then began a sad time for the unfortunate stepchild. "Is this stupid goose to sit with us in the parlor?" they said. "Whoever wants to eat bread must earn it. Go and sit with the kitchen maid." They took away her pretty clothes and made her put on an old gray frock and gave her wooden clogs. Just look at the proud princess. "Just look at the proud princess, how well she's dressed," they laughed as they led her to the kitchen. There the girl was obliged to do hard work from morning till night, get up at daybreak, carry water, light the fire, cook and wash. Put that over there. Not content with that, the sisters inflicted on her every vexation they could think of. They made fun of her and tossed the peas and lentils among the ashes. So that she had to sit down and pick them out again. In the evening, when she was worn out with work, she had no bed to go to, but had to lie on the hearth among the cinders. And because, on account of that, she always looked dusty and dirty, they called her Ashenputtel. It happened one day that the father had a mind to go to the fair, so he asked both his stepdaughters what he should bring home for them. "Fine clothes," said one. "Pearls and jewels," said the other. "But you, Ashenputtel," said he, "what will you have?" "Father, break off for me the first twig which brushes against your hat on your way home." Well, for his 2 stepdaughters he brought beautiful clothes, pearls and jewels, and on his way home, as he was riding through a green copse. Copse? Copse. I'm not actually sure how to pronounce that word. I know what it means. Copse. Okay, so copse. There we go. The more you know. And on his way home, as he was riding through a green copse, a hazel twig grazed against him and knocked his hat off. Then he broke off the branch and took it with him. When he got home, he gave his stepdaughters what they had asked for, and to Ashenputtel he gave the twig from the hazel bush. Ashenputtel thanked him and went to her mother's grave and planted the twig upon it. She wept so much that her tears fell and watered it, and it took root and became a fine tree. Ashenputtel went to the grave 3 times every day, wept and prayed, and every time a little white bird came and perched upon the tree. And when she uttered a wish, the little bird threw down to her what she had wished for. Now it happened that the king proclaimed a festival, which was to last 3 days, and to which all the beautiful maidens in the country were invited, in order that his son might choose a bride. When the 2 stepdaughters heard that they were also to be present, they were in high spirits and called Ashenputtel and said, brush our hair, and clean our shoes, and fasten our buckles, for we are going to the feast at the king's palace." Ashenputtel obeyed, but wept, for she also would gladly have gone to the ball with them, and begged her stepmother to give her leave to go. "You, Ashenputtel," she said, "why, you are covered with dust and dirt. You go to the festival. Besides, you have no clothes or shoes, and yet you want to go to the ball." As she, however, went On asking, her stepmother said, "Well, I have thrown a dishful of lentils into the cinders. If you have picked them all out in 2 hours, you shall go with us." The girl went through the back door into the garden and cried, ye gentle doves, and all ye little birds under heaven, come and help me. The good into a dish to throw, the bad into your crops can go. Sorry. The good into a dish to throw, the bad into your crops can go. Then 2 white doves came in by the kitchen window and were followed by the turtle doves, and finally all the little birds under heaven flocked in, chirping, and settled down among the ashes. And the doves gave a nod with their little heads, peck, 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 and then the rest began also, peck, 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 and collected all the good beans into the dish. Scarcely had an hour passed before they had finished, and all flown out again. Then the girl brought the dish to her stepmother, and was delighted to think that now she would be able to go to the feast with them. But she said, "No, Ashenputtel, you have no clothes and cannot dance. You will only be laughed at." But when she began to cry, the stepmother said, "If you can pick out 2 whole dishes of lentils from the ashes in an hour, you shall go with us." And she thought, "She will never be able to do that." And she thought, "She will never be able to do that." When her stepmother had thrown the dishes of lentils among the ashes, the girl went out through the back door and cried, "Ye gentle doves, ye turtle doves, and all ye little birds under heaven, come and help me. The good into a dish to throw, the bad into your crops can go." Then 2 white doves came in by the kitchen window and were followed by the turtle doves and all the other little birds under heaven, and in less than an hour the whole had been picked up and they had all flown away. Then the girl carried the dish to her stepmother and was delighted to think that she would now be able to go to the ball. But she said, "It's not a bit of good. You can't go with us, for you've got no clothes and you can't dance. We should be quite ashamed of you." Thereupon she turned her back upon her and hurried off with her 2 proud daughters. As soon as everyone had left the house, Ashenputtel went out to her mother's grave under the hazel tree and cried, "Shiver and shake, dear little tree, gold and silver shower on me." Then the bird threw down to her a gold and silver robe, and a pair of slippers embroidered with silk and silver. With all speed she put on the robe and went to the feast. But her stepsisters and their mother did not recognize her, and supposed that she was some foreign princess, so beautiful did she appear in her golden dress. They never gave a thought to Ashenputtel, but imagined that she was sitting at home in the dirt picking the lentils out of the cinders. The prince came up to the stranger, took her by the hand, and danced with her. In fact, he would not dance with anyone else, and never let go of her hand. If anyone came up to ask her to dance, he said, "This is my partner." She danced until nightfall, and then wanted to go home, but the prince said, "I will go with you and escort you," for he wanted to see to whom the beautiful maiden belonged. But she slipped out of his way and sprang into the pigeon house. When the prince waited till her father came and told him that the unknown maiden had vanished into the pigeon house, the old man thought, "Could it be Ashenputtel?" And he had an axe brought to him so that he might break down the pigeon house, but there was no one inside. Then they went home. There lay Ashenputtel in her dirty clothes among the cinders, and a dismal oil lamp was burning in the chimney corner, for Ashenputtel had quietly jumped down out of the pigeon house and ran back to the hazel tree. There she had taken off her beautiful clothes and laid them on the grave, and the bird had taken them away again. Then she settled herself among the ashes on the hearth in her old gray frock. On the second day, when the festival was renewed, and her parents and stepsisters had started forth again, Ashenputtel went to the hazel tree and said, "Shiver and shake, dear little tree, gold and silver shower on me." Then the bird threw down a still more gorgeous robe than on the previous day. And when she appeared at the festival in this robe, everyone was astounded by her beauty. The king's son had waited till she came, and at once took her hand, and she danced with no one but him. When others came forward and invited her to dance, he said, "This is my partner." At nightfall she wished to leave, but the prince went after her, hoping to see into what house she went, but she sprang into the garden behind the house. There stood a fine big tree on which the most delicious pears hung. She climbed up among the branches as nimbly as a squirrel, and the prince could not make out what had become of her. But he waited till her father came, and then said to him, "The unknown maiden has slipped away from me, and I think that she has jumped into the pear tree." The father thought, "Can it be Ashenputtel?" And he had the axe brought to cut down the tree, but there was no one on it. When they went home and looked into the kitchen, there lay Ashenputtel among the cinders as usual, for she had jumped down on the other side of the tree, taken back the beautiful clothes to the bird on the hazel tree, and put on her old gray frock. I'm going to pause just for a second and mention the most delicious pear tree. And he's just like, "Give me an axe. We're going to cut this bad boy down." Oh, that's a shame. Absolute shame. Waste of a good tree. Okay. On the third day, when her parents and sisters had started, Ashenputtel went again to her mother's grave and said, "Silver and shake, dear little tree, gold and silver shower on me." Then the bird threw down a dress which was so magnificent that no one had ever seen the like before, and the slippers were entirely of gold. When she appeared at the festival in this attire, they were all speechless with astonishment. The prince danced only with her, and if anyone else asked her to dance, he said, "This is my partner." When night fell and she wanted to leave, the prince was more desirous than ever to accompany her, but she darted away from him so quickly that he could not keep up with her. But the prince had used a stratagem and had caused the steps to be covered with cobbler's wax. The consequence was that as the maiden sprang down, her left slipper remained sticking there. The prince took it up. It was small and dainty and entirely made of gold. The next morning he went with it to Ashenputtel's father and said to him, "No other shall become my wife but she whose foot this golden slipper fits." The two sisters were delighted at that, for they both had beautiful feet. The eldest went into the room intending to try on the slipper, and her mother stood beside her. But her great toe prevented her getting it on. Her foot was too long. Then her mother handed her a knife and said, "Cut off the toe." Handed her a knife and said, "Cut off the toe. When you are queen, you won't have to walk any more." What? What? Just cut off your toe? Okay. Sure. Let's see. What did you say here, Teeth? Local park by me has a pear tree, and I think I'd actually cry if they cut it down, and that one doesn't even grant wishes. To be fair, yeah. Yeah, I would be really upset if I had like access to real fruit trees. It's it's Grimm fairy tales, curious. This is just what happens. Okay. The girl cut off her toe, forced her foot into the slipper, stifled her pain, and went out to the prince. Then he took her up on his horse as his bride and rode away with her. However, they had to pass the grave on the way, and there sat the two doves on the hazel tree and cried, Prithee look back, there's blood on the track. The shoe is too small, at home the true bride is waiting, they call, thy call. Okay. Prithee look back, there's blood on the track. The shoe is too small, at home the true bride is waiting, thy call. Oh, it's a little bit of a ditty. Okay. Mutilation in my child stories? More likely than you think. Yes, you're not wrong. Then he looked at her foot and saw how the blood was streaming from it. So he turned his horse round and carried the false bride back to her home and said that she was not the right one. The second sister must try the shoe. Then she went into the room and succeeded in getting her toes into the shoe, but her heel was too big. Then her mother handed her a knife and said, "Cut a bit off your heel. When you are queen, you won't have to walk any more." The maiden cut a bit off her heel, forced her foot into the shoe, stifled her pain, and then went out to the prince. Then he took her up on his horse as his bride and rode off with her. As they passed the grave, the two doves were sitting on the hazel tree, crying. Prithee look back, there's blood on the track. The shoe is too small, the home the true bride is waiting for thy call. Is waiting thy call. Okay. Prithee look back, there's blood on the track. The shoe is too small. At the home the true bride is waiting thy call. Well, sorry. He looked down at her foot and saw that it was streaming with blood, and there was deep red spots on her stockings. Then he turned his horse and brought the false bride back to her home. "This is not the right one either," he said. "Have you no other daughter?" Have you no other daughter? English. Have you no other daughter? "No," said the man. "There is only a daughter of my late wife's, a puny, stunted drudge, but she cannot possibly be the bride." The prince said that she must be sent for, but the mother answered, "Oh no, she is much too dirty. She mustn't be seen on any account." He was, however, absolutely determined to have his way, and they were obliged to summon Ashenputtel. When she had washed her hands and face, she went up and curtsied to the prince, who handed her the golden slipper. She sat down on a bench, pulled off her wooden clock, and put on the slipper, which fitted to a nicety. Which fitted to a nicety. What an interesting sentence. Which fitted to a nicety. And when she stood up and the prince looked into her face, he recognized the beautiful maiden that he had danced with and cried, "This is the true bride." The stepmother and the two sisters were dismayed and turned white with rage, but he took Ashenputtel on his horse and rode off with her. As they rode past the hazel tree, the two white doves cried, Prithee look back, no blood's on the track, the shoe's not too small, you carry the true bride home to your hall." And when they had said this, they both came flying down and settled on Ashenputtel's shoulders, one on the right and one on the left, and remained perched there. When the wedding was going to take place, the two false sisters came and wanted to curry favor with her and take part in her good fortune. As the bridal party was going to the church, the eldest was on the right side, the youngest on the left, and the doves picked out one of the eyes of each of them. Afterwards, when they were coming out of the church, the elder was on the left and the younger on the right, and the doves picked out the other eye of each of them, and so for their wickedness and falseness they were punished with blindness for the rest of their days. I mean, okay, a bit savage, but yeah, I guess, sure. Here we are, full of murder. Murder? Judas! Yeah, that was a little bit scary, I guess. Something a little unusual. Okay, let's continue on. Once again, between chapters, I do like to remind everyone, please hydrate, grab a snack, I know. It's Ashenputtel is the Grimm's fairy tales version of Cinderella. So it's interesting, but yeah. Well, and the stepmother who was rude to her too also didn't get punished. I mean, in other stories in Grimm's fairy tales, stepmothers have to like wear red hot iron shoes and dance until they die. I don't know. It's been a wild ride through this entire book. Fascinating though. Historically accurate and fascinating. Okay, here we go. So we are on to the white snake. Okay. Let's see, grab here. There we go. The white snake. A long time ago, there lived a king whose wisdom was celebrated far and wide. Nothing was unknown to him, and news of the most Nothing was unknown to him, and news of the most secret transactions seemed to reach him through the air. Now, he had one very odd habit. Every day at dinner, when the courtiers had withdrawn and he was quite alone, a trusted servant had to bring in another dish. It was always covered, and even the servant did not know what it contained, nor anyone else, for the king never uncovered it till he was alone. This had gone on for a long time, when one day the servant who carried the dish was overcome by his curiosity, and took the dish to his own room. When he had carefully locked the door, he took the dish cover off and saw a white snake lying on the dish. At the sight of it, he could not resist tasting it, so he cut off a piece. He cut a piece off and put it into his mouth. Hardly had he tasted it, however, when he heard a wonderful whispering of delicate voices. Pause. You're just gonna eat the man's food. Just I need to know what's under the dish. Okay, curiosity satisfied. Oh, I see an animal and I'm just gonna eat it. That's okay. Sure, sure. I'm going to just cut off a piece and put it in my mouth. That makes so much sense. You know, I'm kind of reminded of gosh, what was her name? It wasn't Clever Elsa, but it was the other the kitchen maid who or the cook who was working for the gentleman, and she had roasted two hens for him for his guest. I think Clever Grethel, I possibly. Um, she was cooking. The her master, the lord of the castle, is like, "Hey, I have a guest coming. I don't know when he's going to show up. Go out and pluck and cook up two chickens for us." Um, and so she does, and then he doesn't arrive. He doesn't arrive. The lord's like, "Well, I need to go get him," and so he leaves, and she just goes down to the cellar and gets a jug of wine and like proceeds to start drinking, and in her inebriation is like, he's never gonna notice the wings of the bird being missing, and eats one, and then well, it's got a match, so she eats the other one, and then proceeds to eat the whole chicken, drinks more wine, eats the second chicken, and then blames it on the guest, and then um he's ready to carve his chickens up, and he's like, she tells the guest that, oh, he's going to steal your ears, and he's just one more. I'm suddenly reminded of that. It's like, oh, I'm just going to eat this chicken. I'm going to eat this snake. That totally makes sense. I don't know. Some of these stories are a bit silly. Hardly had he tasted it, however, when he heard a wonderful whispering of delicate voices. He went to the window and listened, and he noticed that the whispers came from the sparrows outside. They were chattering away and telling each other all kinds of things that they had heard in the woods and fields. Eating the snake had given him the power of understanding the language of birds and animals. I just started right into this second story without even thinking about the moral of the previous one. It's been a day. Okay. Let's go back here, grab my note. Okay, Ashenputtel, of course, similar to Cinderella, is a cautionary tale about the consequences of mistreating your children. Specifically, Aschenputtel was made to live in the ash and cinders of the fireplace, and then later she became queen. And now her sisters, who were mean to her, um, one lost a toe and the other one lost a heel, and now they're both permanently blind because, they walked with her down the aisle and decided, oh, I'm going to walk with her a second time. They could have both just had one eye, learn from their mistake. No, just like, oh, we're in it to win it. We got to curry favor from our stepsister. But ultimately, be kind. Be nice. If you can't be kind, be nice. Be respectful, and just refrain from harming others, right? That's the takeaway from that lesson or that story. Don't just be nice, be kind, and refrain from harming other people, and nothing hopefully nothing ill will happen to you either. But let me return to the story here. Okay. And grab that, put that right over here. So I have it faster. Uh, there we go. Okay. He went to the window and listened, and he noticed that the whispers came from the sparrows outside. They were chattering away and telling each other all kinds of things that they had heard in the woods and fields. Eating the snake had given him the power of understanding the language of birds and animals. Now it happened on this day that the queen lost her most precious ring, and suspicion fell upon the trusted servant who went about everywhere. The king sent for him, and threatened that if it was not found by the next day, he would be sent to prison. Oh, it's been a minute since we've seen any beautiful artwork in this. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. Look at that clean line there from the printing. There's a couple of chips in the painting or the image. We have the fish in the pond here. Beautiful details on his, like, it almost looks velvety. They overtoned it with blue. They did a blue print and then they hit it with an orange to give it that soft ombre effect. That's really pretty. Sepia. Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Oh, yes. The illustrations were all by Arthur Rackham. So every painting, every ink drawing, and every well, it's kind of like a painting. So it's intaglio. So basically, it's a big metal plate that he took his design and then printed it, like put it onto the plate, and then he uses acid to etch it, and it eats away at the metal to leave this relief pattern. So then they print it, so they can keep printing the same image and over and over and over again. It's not a wood block. You can't get these beautiful clean lines like this with a wood block. You have to do intaglio. But then they go back over it with a wash of like watercolor to give it that softness and the color, the sepia tone. This would have been like at least two, maybe three colors, because you have a bit of a green here in the plants and on the fish, and then you have the blue of his shirt, and then also that kind of sepia reddish orange tone that's throughout. Yeah. But yeah. Arthur Rackham. Beautiful artist. Yeah. It's a really cool process. Okay, back to it. In vain he protested his innocence. He was not believed. In his grief and anxiety, he went down into the courtyard and wondered how he should get out of this difficulty. A number of ducks were lying peaceably together by a stream, stroking down their feathers with their bills while they chattered gaily. The servant stood still to listen to them. They were telling each other of their morning's walks and experiences. Then one of them said, somewhat fretfully, I have something lying heavy on my stomach. In my haste, I swallowed the queen's ring this morning. The servant quickly seized it by the neck, carried it off into the kitchen, and said to the cook, "Here's a fine fat duck. You had better kill it at once." "Yes, indeed," said the cook, weighing it in her hand. "It has spared no pains in stuffing itself. It should have been roasted long ago." Poor duck. The servant had now no difficulty in proving. Oh, okay, sorry. So she killed it and cut it open, and there, sure enough, was the queen's ring. The servant had now no difficulty in proving his innocence. Yeah, poor duck. And the king, to make up for his injustice, gave the servant leave to ask any favor he liked, and promised him the highest post about the court which he might desire. The servant, however, declined everything but a horse, and some money to travel with, as he wanted to wander about for a while to see the world. His request being granted, he set off on his travels, and one day came to a pond where he saw 3 fish. 3 fishes were caught among the reeds and gasping for breath. Oop. Just lost my train of thought for a second there. Although it is said that fishes are dumb, he understood their complaint at perishing thus miserably. As he had a compassionate heart, he got off his horse and put the 3 captives back into the water. They wriggled in their joy, stretched up their heads above the water, and cried, "We will remember that you saved us and reward you for it." Because that's something fish can do, apparently. He rode on again. After a time, he seemed to hear a voice in the sand at his feet. He listened and heard an ant king complain. An ant king. Interesting. "I wish these human beings and their animals would keep out of our way." "A clumsy horse has just put his hoof down upon a number of my people in the most heartless way." He turned his horse into the side path, and the ant king cried, "We will remember and reward you." He's the one who put the horse into their path. Okay, sure. The road now ran through a forest, and he saw a pair of ravens standing by their nest, throwing out their young. Ooh. "Away with you, you gallow birds," they were saying. "We can't feed you any longer. You are old enough to look after yourselves." The poor little nestlings lay on the ground, fluttering and flapping their wings and crying, "We poor helpless children to feed ourselves, and we can't even fly. We shall die of hunger. There is nothing else for it." Very articulate nestlings. The good youth dismounted, killed his horse with his sword, and left the carcass as food for the young ravens. They hopped along to it and cried, "We will remember and reward you." Now he had to depend upon his own legs, and after going a long way he came to a large town. There was much noise and bustle in the streets, where a man on horseback was making a proclamation. "The king's daughter seeks a husband, but anyone who wishes to sue for her hand must accomplish a hard task, and if he does not bring it to a successful issue, he will forfeit his life." Forfeit. Many had already attempted the task, but they had risked their lives in vain. When the youth saw the princess, he was so dazzled by her beauty that he forgot all danger, at once sought an audience of the king, and announced himself as a suitor. He was immediately led out to the seashore, and a golden ring was thrown into the water before his eyes. Then the king ordered him to fetch it out of the depths of the sea, and added, "If you come to land without it, you will be thrown back every time till you perish in the waves." Everyone pitied the handsome youth, but they had to go and leave him standing solitary on the seashore. Okay, we're just we're just gonna let him perish in the ocean if he doesn't bring back the ring that you threw. Okay, fine. It's a challenge. He was pondering over what he should do when all at once he saw three fishes swimming towards him. They were no others than the very ones whose lives he had saved. The middle one carried a mussel shell in its mouth, which it laid on the sand at the feet of the youth. When he picked it up and opened it, there lay the ring. Full of joy, he took it to the king, expecting that he would give him the promised reward. The proud princess, however, when she heard that he was not her equal, rude, okay. The proud princess, however, when she heard that he was not her equal, despised him, and demanded that he should perform yet another task. So she went into the garden herself, and strewed 10 sacks of millet seeds among the grass. He must pick up every one of these before the sun rises tomorrow morning, said she. Not a grain must be missing. The youth sat miserably in the garden, wondering how it could possibly be done. But as he could not think of a plan, he remained sadly waiting for the dawn which would bring him to death. But when the first sunbeams fell on the garden, he saw the 10 sacks full to the top, and not a grain was missing. The ant king had come in the night with thousands and thousands of his ants, and the grateful creatures had picked up the millet and filled the sacks. The princess came into the garden herself and saw, with amazement, that the youth had completed the task. But still she could not control her proud heart, and she said, "Even if he has accomplished these 2 tasks, he shall not become my husband till he brings me an apple from the tree of life." The youth had no idea where to find the tree of life. However, he started off, meaning to walk as far as his legs would carry him, but he had no hope of finding it. When he had traveled through 3 kingdoms, he was one night passing through a great forest, and he lay down under a tree to sleep. He heard a rustling among the branches, and a golden apple fell into his hand. At the same time, 3 ravens flew down, perched on his knee, and said, "We are the young ravens you saved from death. When we grew big and heard that you were looking for the golden apple, we flew across the sea to the end of the world, where the tree of life stands, and brought you the apple." The youth, delighted, started on his homeward journey and took the golden apple to the beautiful princess, who had now no further excuse to offer. They divided the apple of life and ate it together, and then her heart was filled with love for him, and they lived happily to a great age. Sure. Why not? Yeah. So she doesn't want to marry him because of, her behavior. I don't know. That was bizarre to me. Here we go. Back to it. Weird. Weird. Okay. So I guess the takeaway from that one is the white snake teaches us that we can achieve great things through hard work and kindness, especially when it's done in the name of love. He he loved the princess despite their differences in station. Like, he saw her and immediately fell in love at first sight and decided, that's a woman for me. And even though she despised him, which is a whole nother separate issue. So even though she despised him, he's like, "Yep, I don't know what it's going to take, but that's my girl. I'm going to make her mine. Gonna marry that girl, marry her anyway." Um, so yeah, he was the ant part of the story was a little goofy because, like, he's the one who rode the horse through the ant camp, but he saved the fish and his solution to saving the ravens was to kill his horse and feed it to them? Sure. Um, I don't know. These are classic fairy tales. They don't always make sense, is my takeaway. Um, but be kind to animals. You never know if they're going to be able to help you again in the future. And that's not the first time I've said that moral, and it's probably not the last because that's a common theme. It's like, you save this and they help you later. We're going to save the phoenix. We're going
I
to
need
save
more caffeine. My blood is not thin enough.
Need some more coffee, do you? I probably do too. So, good call. Good call. Yeah. Today's caffeine is definitely hitting the spot today. So, as a friendly reminder between chapters. Aw, it's so cute. Good evening from Tiger Town. Yay! I hope you got all of those creatures in that game you were playing with the constellations. It was so pretty. I really enjoyed watching it. What was that one called, Tiger Fae? Well, if you remember, be sure to write it down. Oh, no worries. I was just trying to remember the name of the game you were playing with the constellations where you're catching the cute bugs. Let's see. Yeah, Paradise March. Marsh. It was really, really cute. 10 out of 10. If you like cozy games, that one's really cute. I like the style of the animation and the artwork in the game, and then the premise of catching frogs and bugs and like connecting to the universe through constellations. This is really neat. Have a good one, Snackery. Enjoy your trivia. Let's return to the stories. Fairy Tales of the Brothers Grimm. This one is The Wolf and the Seven Kids. There was once an old nanny goat who was 7 kids, who had 7 kids. Oh, that kind of kids. Okay. There was once an old nanny goat. Let's see. Here we go. There was once an old nanny goat who had 7 kids, and she was just as fond of them as a mother of her children. One day she was going into the woods to fetch some food for them, so she called them all up to her and said, "My dear children, I am going out into the woods. Beware of the wolf. If once he gets into the house, he will eat you up, skin and hair and all. The rascal often disguises himself, but you will know him by his rough voice and his black feet." The kid said, "Oh, we will be very careful, dear mother. You may be quite happy about us." Bleating tenderly, and the old goat went off to her work. Before long, someone knocked at the door and cried, "Open the door, dear children. Your mother has come back and brought something for each of you." But the kids knew quite well by the voice that it was the wolf. "We won't open the door," they cried. "You are not our mother. She has a soft, gentle voice, but yours is rough, and we are quite sure that you are the wolf." So he went away to a shop and bought a lump of chalk, which he ate, and it made his voice quite soft. He went back, knocked at the door again, and cried, "Open the door, dear children. Your mother has come back and brought something for each of you." But the wolf had put one of his paws on the window-sill, where the kids saw it and cried, "We won't open the we won't open the door. Our mother has not got a black foot as you have. You are the wolf." Then the wolf ran to a baker and said, I have bruised my foot. Please put some dough on it. And when the baker had put some dough on his foot, he ran to the miller and said, Strew some flour on my foot. The miller thought, the old wolf is going to take somebody in, and refused. But the wolf said, If you don't do it, I will eat you up. So the miller was frightened and whitened his paws. People are like that, you know. Now the wretch went for the third time to the door and knocked and said, Open the door, children. Your dear mother has come home and has brought something for each of you out of the wood. The kids cried, Show us your feet first, that we may be sure you are a mother. He put his paws on the window-sill, and when they saw that they were white, they believed all he said and opened the door. Alas! It was a wolf who walked in. They were terrified and tried to hide themselves. One ran under the table, the second jumped into the bed, the third into the oven. You're just making it easy for the wolf there. The fourth ran into the kitchen, the fifth got into the cupboard, and the sixth into the washtub, and the seventh hid in the tall clock case. But the wolf found them all but one, and made short work of them. He swallowed one after the other, except the youngest one in the clock case, whom he did not find. When he had satisfied his appetite, he took himself off and lay down in a meadow outside, where he soon fell asleep. Not long after, the old nanny goat came back from the woods. Oh, what a terrible sight met her eyes! The house door was wide open, table, chairs, and benches were overturned, the washing bowl was smashed to atoms, the covers and pillows torn from the bed. She searched all over the house for her children, but nowhere were they to be found. She called them by name, one by one, but no one answered. At last, when she came to the youngest, a tiny voice cried, I am here, dear mother, hidden in the clock case. She brought him out, and he told her that the wolf had come and devoured all the others. You may imagine how she wept over her children. At last, in her grief, she went out, and the youngest kid ran by her side. When they went into the meadow, there lay the wolf under a tree, making the branches shake with his snores. They examined him from every side, and they could plainly see movements within his distended body. Ah, heavens! Thought the goat. Is it possible that my poor children whom he ate for his supper should be still alive? She sent the kid running to the house to fetch scissors, needles, and thread. Then she cut a hole in the monster's side, and hardly had she begun when a kid popped out its head, and as soon as the hole was big enough, all six jumped out, one after the other, all alive, and without having suffered the least injury, for in his greed the monster had swallowed them whole. You may imagine the mother's joy. She hugged them and skipped about like a tailor on his wedding day. At last she said, Go and fetch some big stones, children, and we will fill up the brute's body while he's still asleep. Then the seven kids brought a lot of stones as fast as they could carry them, and stuffed the wolf with them till he could hold no more. The old mother quickly sewed him up, without his having noticed anything or even moved. At last, when the wolf had had his sleep out, he got up, and as the stones made him feel very thirsty, he wanted to go to a spring to drink. But as soon as he moved, the stones began to roll about and rattle inside him. Then he cried, What's the rumbling and tumbling that sets my stomach grumbling? I thought 'twas 6 kids, flesh and bones, now find it's naught but rolling stones. When he reached the spring and stooped over the water to drink, the heavy stones dragged him down, and he was drowned miserably. When the 7 kids saw what had happened, they came running up and cried aloud, The wolf is dead! The wolf is dead! And they and their mother capered and danced round the spring in their joy. Sure. Just, hooray! Hooray! The wolf is dead! The wolf is dead! Just capering about around the spring. Sure, why not? this this is a really classic moral of don't open the door for strangers. Like this is very very true. They could be taken, stolen, you know, eaten whole apparently. Um it's a classic story. It's warning children not to open the door when they're home alone. Um, this is a story that highlights our fears of scammers, burglars, kidnappers, and other dangers. It's a good lesson. That was a good story. Little weird with the whole like cutting him open and letting out the kids and putting him back. But I mean, the same thing happened in Red Riding Hood. Let out the granny, and then they filled his stomach full of boulders. Common theme for wolves. I didn't realize wolves could just have stones rolling around inside them. That's wild. All right. Let's get started on the next one here. The queen bee. The queen bee. Once upon a time, two princes started off in search of adventure, and falling into a wild, free mode of life, did not come home again. The third brother, who was called the Blockhead, set out to look for the other two. But when at last he found them, they mocked him for thinking of making his way in the world with his simplicity, while they, who were so much cleverer, could not get on. They all three went on together till they came to an ant heap. The two elder princes wanted to disturb it, to see how the little ants crept away carrying their eggs. But the blockhead said, "Leave the little creatures alone. I will not allow you to disturb them." Then they went on further till they came to a lake in which a great many ducks were swimming about. The two wanted to catch and roast a pair, but the blockhead would not allow it, and said, "Leave the creatures alone. You shall not kill them." At last they came to a bee's nest, containing such a quantity of honey that it flowed round the trunk of the tree. But the princes wanted to set fire to the tree and suffocate the bees so as to remove the honey. But the blockhead stopped them again and said, "Leave the creatures alone. I will not let you burn them." At last the three brothers came to a castle where the stables were full of stone horses, but not a soul was to be seen. They went through all the rooms till they came to a door quite at the end, fastened with three bolts. In the middle of the door was a lattice through which one could see into the room. There they saw a little gray man sitting at a table. They called at him once, twice, but he did not hear them. Finally, when they had called him the third time, he stood up and opened the door and came out. He said not a word, but led them to a richly spread table, and when they had eaten and drunk, he took them each to a bedroom. The next morning, the little gray man came to the eldest prince, beckoned, and led him to a stone tablet whereon were inscribed three tasks by means of which the castle should be freed from enchantment. This was the first task. In the wood under the moss lay the princess's pearls, 1,000 in number. These had all these had all to be found, and if at sunset a single one were missing, the seeker was turned to stone. The eldest went away and searched all day, but when evening came he had only found the first 100, and it happened as the inscription foretold. He was turned to stone. The next day the second brother undertook the quest, but he fared no brother no no brother fared no better than the first, for he only found 200 pearls, and he too was turned to stone. At last came the blockhead's turn. He searched in the moss, but the pearls were hard to find, and he got on but slowly. Then he sat down on a rock and cried, and as he was sitting there, the ant king, whose life he had saved, came up with 5,000 ants, and it was not long before the little creature had found all the pearls and laid them in a heap. Now the second task was to get the key of the princess's room out of the lake. When the blockhead came to the lake, the ducks he had once saved swam up, dived, and brought up the key from the depths. But the third task was the hardest. The prince had to find out which was the youngest and the most charming of the princesses while they were asleep. They were exactly alike and could not be distinguished in any way except that before going to sleep each had eaten a different kind of sweet. The eldest a piece of sugar, the second a little syrup, and the third a spoonful of honey. Then the queen of the bees, whom the blockhead had saved from burning, came and tried the lips of all three. Finally, she settled on the mouth of the one who had eaten the honey, and so the prince recognized the right one. Then the charm was broken, and everything in the castle was set free, and those who had been turned to stone took human form again. And the blockhead married the youngest and sweetest princess and became king after her father's death, while his two brothers married the other sisters. Sure, why not? Here are the three sleeping princesses, all alike, and the youngest of the three, so maybe they're triplets. Um, what had eaten honey. That's really cool though. Like I love it's almost like Alphonse Mucha Art Nouveau esque with the hair. It's beautifully done. So okay. All right, we are kind of in between chapters here, and I just want to kind of check in with everybody. Everybody doing pretty good? Everyone staying hydrated, getting their snacks. I think I have time for one more story before the ad break, and then we can continue afterwards. Um, let's see here. We've got, yep, the elves and the shoemaker. Um, so real quick recap here on the queen bee. Actually, I'll do the recap, then the ad break, and then that's good. So the queen bee reinforces the message of treating animals with kindness as they can have an impact in the future. He saved the ducks. He saved the ant colony from being smashed by his brothers. He saved the bee colony from being burned by his brothers. Honestly, the fact that they were turned to stone was probably for their own good, but the fact that they got to marry the princesses after they reawakened was surprising. But it is what it is. We move on. We do our best. But let's go ahead and read the next story. Then we'll go into ad break and we'll be right back. You have a big mug of water, do you, Teeth? Good. Good, good, good. Good news. All right. So the next story is called The Elves and the Shoemaker. There was once a shoemaker who, through no fault of his own, had become so poor that at last he had only leather enough left for one pair of shoes. At evening he cut out the shoes which he intended to begin upon the next morning, and since he had a good conscience, he laid down quietly, said his prayers, and fell asleep. In the morning, when he had said his prayers and was preparing to sit down to work, he found the pair of shoes standing, finished, on his table. He was amazed, and could not understand it in the least. I mean, I feel like that's pretty fair. Like, how did he. Sure, okay, we continue. He took the shoes in his hand to examine them more closely. They were so neatly sewn that not a stitch was out of place, and were as good as the work of a master hand. Soon after, a purchaser came in, and as he was much pleased with the shoes, he paid more than the ordinary price for them, so that the shoemaker was able to buy leather for 2 pairs of shoes with the money. He cut them out in the evening, and next day, with fresh courage, was about to go to work. But he had no need to, for when he got up, the shoes were finished, and buyers were not lacking. These gave him so much money that he was able to buy leather for 4 pairs of shoes. Early next morning, he found the 4 pairs finished, and so it went on. What he cut out at evening was finished in the morning, so that he was soon again in comfortable circumstances and became a well-to-do man. Now, it happened one evening, not long before Christmas, when he had cut out some shoes as usual, that he said to his wife, "How would it be if we were to sit up tonight to see who it is that lends us such a helping hand?" The wife agreed, lighted a candle, and they hid themselves in the corner of the room behind the clothes which were hanging there. At midnight came 2 little naked men who sat down at the shoemaker's table, took up the cut-out work, and began with their tiny fingers to stitch, sew, and hammer so neatly and quickly that the shoemaker could not believe his eyes. They did not stop till everything was quite finished, and stood complete on the table. Then they ran swiftly away. The next day the wife said, "The little men have made us rich, and we ought to show our gratitude. They were running about with nothing on and must freeze with cold. Now I will make them little shirts, coats, waistcoats, and hose, and will even knit them a pair of stockings, and you shall make them each a pair of shoes." The husband agreed, and at evening, when they had everything ready, they laid out the presents on the table and hid themselves to see how the little men would behave. At midnight they came skipping in and were about to set to work, but instead of the leather ready cut out, they found the charming little clothes. At first they were surprised, then excessively delighted. With the greatest speed they put on and smoothed down the pretty clothes, singing, "Now we're boys so fine and neat, why cobble more for others' feet?" Then they hopped and danced about and leapt over chairs and tables and out at the door. Henceforward they came back no more, but the shoemaker fared well as long as he lived, and had good luck in all his undertakings. Sure. Why not? Um, Nobody died. Woo! We should always have like a death counter through this whole series. Um, the Elves and the Shoemaker teaches us that working hard to make things better um, will eventually win out, and that we have to be thankful for all the help that we receive for others. And while they were happy to just keep making shoes, naked as jaybirds, as soon as they gave them clothes, they're like, "Peace out, homie. We're not making anybody else's shoes. Ours are so awesome." And they left. But he repaid the kindness that was given unto him. She helped him repay that kindness. And I think it's beautiful. It's silly, but it's beautiful. Um, yeah. And nobody died. Winning. Okay. If after that, let's go ahead and take a quick ad break, and then when we come back, we'll get cooking again. So, give me a minute, and I will be right back. Hello, hello, and I'm back. Um, Hopefully that wasn't too painful for anyone. We are trying to get through this as best as we're able. Okay, so the next story from the fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm is called The Wolf and the Man. I'm kind of curious to see how the wolf will turn out in this story. Will he be the villain, or will he be the unwitting stooge? Or maybe he's the good guy. We'll see. The Wolf and the Man. A fox was one day talking to a wolf about the strength of man. No animals, he said, could withstand man, and they were obliged to use cunning to hold their own against him. The wolf answered, "If ever I happened to see a man, I would attack him all the same." "Well, I can help you to that," said the fox. "Come to me early tomorrow, and I will show you one." The wolf was early astir, and the fox took him out to a road in the forest, traversed daily by a huntsman. First came an old discharged soldier. "Is that a man?" asked the wolf. "No," answered the fox. He has been he has been a man." After that, a little boy appeared on his way to school. "Is that a man?" "No, he is going to be a man." At last the huntsman made his appearance, his gun on his back, and his hunting knife at his side. The fox said to the wolf, "Look, there comes a man. You may attack him, but I will make off to my hole." The wolf set on the man, who said to himself when he saw him, "What a pity my gun isn't loaded with ball," and fired a charge of shot in the wolf's face. The wolf made a wry face, but he was not to be so easily frightened, and attacked him again. Then the huntsman gave him the second charge. The wolf swallowed the pain and rushed at the huntsman, but he drew his bright hunting knife and hit out right and left. Hit out left and right with it, so that, streaming with blood, the wolf ran back to the fox. "Well, brother," said the fox. "Well, brother wolf," said the fox, "and how did you get on with the man?" "Alas," said the wolf, "I never thought the strength of man would be what it is. First he took a stick from his shoulder and blew into it, and something flew into my face, which tickled frightfully. Then he blew into it again, and it flew into my eyes and nose like lightning and hail. Then he drew a shining rib out of his body, and stuck at me with it till I was more dead than alive, and struck at me with it till I was more dead than alive. Now you see," said the fox, "what a braggart you are. You throw your hatchet so far that you can't get it back again." Almost the entirety of this story could have fit on one page. It's so short. Um, I guess the wolf was a braggart, said that he could conquer man. Um, and he probably could have the old soldier or the young boy. But the huntsman, who was trained to battle against creatures as he, um, there are consequences, right? To your statements. He was a braggart. He followed through with his brag, his boast, and was, bloodied and nearly murdered by the huntsman. So um, you you could say that the this story teaches you, or teaches us, the importance of accepting your own abilities and limitations. Just because you think you can do a thing doesn't mean that you actually can. um, and there are outside influences that will impact you know the circumstances. So yeah, stay in your lane. He quote unquote fucked around and found out in good order. All right, so let's move on to the next story. So, this next story is called The Turnip. There were once two brothers who both served as soldiers, and one was rich and the other was poor. Oh, hi, Sassy. Welcome in. Been a minute? The poor one, wishing to better himself, discarded his uniform and worked like a peasant. Then he dug and hoed his little field and sowed turnips. The seed came up, and one of the turnips grew to such an enormous size that it seemed as though it would never have finished, and it might have been called the Queen of Turnips, for its like had never been seen before, nor ever will be again. Do a quick shout out to Sassy here. She is my lovely friend from Australia. Can I spell this correctly? I don't know. SASL. Okay, we're good. Yay! I did it. Hooray! Sorry, I'm still figuring out these bots. So Sassy Cheese, longtime friend. Yes. Big shout out. Amazing variety streamer. Does a lot of gaming for the most part, but I've known them for a long time, and they, I don't know, just the sweetest person. You know, she has an amazing model too. You should go check her out if you haven't already. Let's see. At last it was so big that it filled a cart, and needed 2 oxen to draw it, and the peasant could not imagine what would come of it, whether it would bring good luck or bad. At last he said to himself, "If I sell it, what shall I gain? I might eat it, but the little turnips would do as well for that. The best thing will be to take it to the king and offer it to him." Ah, thank you very much. This was sorry. This one's from Seagenary. Big fan. The best thing will be to take it to the king and offer it to him. So he loaded a cart, harnessed 2 oxen, and took it to the court to present it to the king. "What is that extraordinary object?" said the king. "I have seen many marvels in my time, but never anything so remarkable as this. What seed did it spring from? Perhaps it belongs to you, especially if you are a child of good luck?" "Oh no," said the peasant. "Lucky I certainly am not, for I am a poor soldier, who, since he could keep himself no longer, has hung up his uniform on a nail, and tills the earth. Further, I have a brother who is rich and well known to you, my lord king, but I, because I have nothing, am forgotten by all the world." Then the king pitied him and said, "Your poverty Your poverty shall be at an end, and you shall receive such rich presents from me that your wealth will equal that of your brother." Thereupon he gave him plenty of gold, lands, fields, and flocks, and enriched him with precious stones, so that the other brother's wealth could not be compared with his. Just for a turnip? I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a giant turnip, like giant pumpkin-sized turnip. Especially you can see it here in this image. Take a look at it. I mean, look at the size of this thing. It's like a whole cart. Two horses to draw the cart. This thing's massive. The king's like, yeah, that's a pretty good turnip there. Let you have all of this money so that you can match your brother, because I pity you. Um, can we get a couple of like pity rich people to like donate? I have some amazing charities I would love to put you in touch with. Jeez. Now, when the rich brother heard what his brother with the single turnip had acquired, he envied him and pondered how he might gain a little treasure for himself. But he wanted to show himself much cleverer. So he took gold and horses and presented them to the king, feeling certain that he would give him a far handsomer gift. For if his brother got so much for a turnip, what should not he get for his beautiful things? The king took the present, saying that he would give him in return nothing rarer or better than the huge turnip. So the rich brother had to put his brother's turnip into a cart and have it taken home. Then he did not know on whom to expend his wrath and bitterness till evil thoughts came to him and he determined to kill his brother. He hired murderers who were to place themselves in ambush, and then he went to his brother and said, "Dear brother, I know of a secret treasure which we will carry off and divide." The other agreed and went without suspicion. But when they got out, the murderer sprang upon him, bound him, and prepared to hang him on a tree. While they were about it, they heard in the distance the clatter of hooves, and the sound of singing, which frightened them so much that they stuck their prisoner into a sack, head foremost, slung it up on a branch, and took to flight. Somebody coming down the road singing is terrifying, I guess. Sure, why not? But the man up in the sack worked a hole in it and stuck his head through. Now the traveler turned out to be nothing more than a student, a young fellow who was riding through the wood, singing cheerily. When the man up in the sack saw someone down below, he called out, "Good day! You come in the nick of time." The student looked all around, but could not make out where the voice came from. At last he said, "Who calls?" A voice from above answered, "Raise your eyes! I am sitting up here in the sack of wisdom, and in short time I have learnt so much that the wisdom of the schools is as air compared to mine. Soon I shall be quite perfect, and shall come down and be the wisest of all mankind. I understand the stars and signs of the heavens, the blowing of the winds, the sands of the sea, the healing of sickness, the power of herbs, the power of herbs, birds, and stones. If you were once inside, you would feel what wonders flow from the sack of knowledge." In the same breath, the sack of wisdom and the sack of knowledge, just for context. When the student heard this, he was astonished and said, "Blessed be the hour when I met you. If only I too might get into the sack for a little." The other answered, as though unwillingly, "I will let you in for a little while for payment and kind words, but you must wait an hour, as there is something rather difficult which I must learn first." But when the student had waited a little, he grew impatient and entreated permission to get in. So great was his thirst for knowledge. Then the man in the sack pretended to give in and said, "In order that I may get out of the sack, you must let it down, then you can get in." So the student let it down, undid the sack, and released the prisoner, and said, "Now pull me up as fast as possible." And he tried to get into the sack and stand upright in it. "Stop," said the other, "that won't do." And he packed him in head first and tied it up, and slung up the disciple of wisdom, dangling him in the air, and said, "How are you, my dear fellow? You will soon feel wisdom coming upon you, and will have a most interesting experience. Sit still till you are wiser." Thereupon he mounted the student's horse and rode off, but sent someone in an hour to let him down again. This could have turned out. I mean, it really could have turned out so much worse for the student in this scenario. I mean, his brother gets off scot-free. The murderers intent on murdering him get off scot-free. He's rich now, has a new horse. Um, and luckily, the murderers didn't come back to kill the student in the sack. So, did the student learn his lesson? Probably. He did gain some wisdom from being headfirst in a sack, hung in a tree. Don't believe everything you hear, I guess would be the takeaway from that. Um, the younger brother, the poor brother, he put up his soldiering and he put to work on the land and he grew the most impressive turnip ever to be seen. So impressive that the only person that could take it is the king. And then the king's like, wow, this is an amazing turnip. You know what? Here, have some riches. You're awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. You're clearly very lucky. I'm glad to have you in my kingdom. And then his brother, who's like, ooh, I want a piece of that action, comes up to the king's like, here, have some gold and money, and look, isn't my gift a better gift? And the king's like, yeah, this is a better gift. Here, take this turnip. So offloads the giant turnip, and his brother just gets so furious that he's like, you know what? I'm gonna kill my brothers, just so that way, I'm so mad, so wrathful. I'm gonna take his life. Just sure, why not? Yeah, I'd say just the takeaway is the student don't believe everything you hear. You know, in this age of technology where there are people with the ability to say anything that they want to, whether it's true, false, or um, made up, whatever you want to say. There's two sides to every story. There's, everyone's got their own perspective. I think that if somebody is trying to sell you a too good a thing, the odds are it's probably too good. So, yeah, just don't believe everything you hear is my takeaway from that one. We are on to the clever Hans. So, this has a lot of back and forth reading, so I'm gonna get confused just reading it so far. I'm gonna definitely get confused trying to keep the who's who and which voice is who. So I'm just going to read it. Where are you going, Hans? Asked his mother. To see Gretel, answered Hans. Behave well, Hans. All right, mother. Goodbye. Goodbye, Hans. Hans comes to Gretel. Good morning, Gretel. Good morning, Hans. What have you brought me? I've not brought you anything. I want a present. Gretel gives him a needle. Hans takes the needle and sticks it in a load of hay and walks home behind the cart. Good evening, mother. Good evening, Hans. Where have you been? I've been to Gretel's. What did you give her? I gave her nothing, but she made me a present. What did she give you? She gave me a needle. What did you do with it? Stuck it in the hay cart. That was stupid, Hans. You should have stuck it in your sleeve. Never mind, mother. I'll do better next time. Where are you going, Hans? To see Gretel, mother. Behave well. All right, mother. Goodbye. Goodbye, Hans. Hans comes to Gretel. Good morning, Gretel. Good morning, Hans. What have you brought me? I've brought you nothing. I've brought nothing, but I want something. Gretel gives him a knife. Goodbye, Gretel. Goodbye, Hans. Hans takes the knife and sticks it in his sleeve and goes home. Good evening, mother. Good evening, Hans. Where have you been? Been to see Gretel. What did you give her? I gave her nothing, but she gave me something. What did she give you? She gave me a knife. Where's the knife, Hans? I stuck it in my sleeve. That's a stupid place, Hans. You should have put it in your pocket. Never mind, mother. I'll do better next time. Where are you going, Hans? To see Gretel, mother. Behave well, then. All right, mother. Goodbye. Goodbye, Hans. Hans comes to Gretel. Good morning, Gretel. Good morning, Hans. Have you brought me anything nice? I've brought nothing. What have you got for me? Gretel gives him a young kid. Goodbye, Gretel. Goodbye, Hans. Hans takes the kid, ties its legs together, and puts it in his pocket. For context, goat. They're referring to a goat. Hans takes the kid, ties its legs together, and puts it in his pocket. When he got home, it was suffocated. Good evening, mother. Good evening, Hans. Where have you been? Been to see Gretel, mother. What did you give her? I gave her nothing, but I brought away something. What did Gretel give you? She gave me a young kid, and what did you do with it? Do with the kid? Put it in my pocket, mother. That was very stupid. You should have led it by a rope. Never mind, Mother. I'll manage better next time. Where are you going, Hans? To see Gretel, Mother. Manage well, then. All right, Mother. Goodbye. Goodbye, Hans. Hans comes to Gretel. Good morning, Gretel. Good morning, Hans. What have you brought me? I've brought you nothing. What have you got for me? Gretel gives him a piece of bacon. Goodbye, Gretel. Goodbye, Hans. Hans takes the bacon, ties a rope around it, and drags it along behind him. The dogs come after him and eat it up. When he got home, he had the rope in his hand, but there was nothing at the end of it. Good evening, Mother. Good evening, Hans. Where have you been? To see Gretel, Mother. What did you take her? I took nothing, but I brought something away. What did she give you? She gave me a piece of bacon. What did you do with the bacon, Hans? I tied it to a rope and dragged it home, but the dogs ate it. That was stupid business, Hans. You should have carried it on your head. Never mind, Mother. I'll do better next time. There he is, with the dogs trailing behind him, following him with the rope of bacon. I mean, he's looking super fly, though. We got this nightcap situation. Oh, yeah. Got a scarf, fancy shoes, pimp cane. Bam, 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 bam. Yeah, he's rocking it. I like it. Where are you going, Hans? To see Gretel, Mother. Behave properly, then. All right, Mother. Goodbye. Goodbye, Hans. Hans comes to Gretel. Good morning, Gretel. Good morning, Hans. What have you brought me? I've brought nothing. What have you got for me? Gretel gives Hans a calf. Goodbye, Gretel. Goodbye, Hans. Hans takes the calf and puts it on his head. It kicks his face. Good evening, Mother. Good evening, Hans. Where have you been? Been to see Gretel, Mother. What did you take her? I took her nothing, Mother. She gave me something. What did she give you, Hans? She gave me a calf, Mother. And what did you do with the calf? Put it on my head, Mother, and it kicked my face. That was very stupid, Hans. You should have led it by a rope and put it in the cow stall. Never mind, Mother. I'll do better next time. Where are you going, Hans? To see Gretel, Mother. Mind how you behave, Hans. All right, Mother. Goodbye. Hans goes to Gretel. Good morning, Gretel. Good morning, Hans. What have you brought me? I've brought you nothing. I want to take away something. I'll go with you myself, Hans. Hans ties Gretel to a rope and leads her home, where he puts her in a stall and ties her up. Then he goes into the house to his mother. Kinky. Good evening, Mother. Good evening, Hans. Where have you been? To see Gretel, Mother. What did you take her? I took nothing. What did Gretel give you? She gave me nothing. She came with me. Where did you leave Gretel? Tied up in the stable with a rope. That was stupid. You should have cast sheep's eyes at her. Never mind, I'll do better next time. Hans went into the stable, plucked out the eyes of the cows and calves, and threw them in Gretel's face. Jesus Christ. Just, he's so clever. So clever. Let's try this again from the top. Hans went into the stable, plucked the eyes out of the cows and calves, and threw them in Gretel's face. Gretel got angry, broke the rope, and ran away. Yet she became Hans' wife. I need a second to process what just happened. Yeah, he's just like, is I think the assumption here is that his mother thinks that he's smart enough to understand what she's saying. Like, well, you should have done this, and that's past tense. But in his mind, oh, that's the advice that I need to use for the next thing that I do. And clearly this is an ongoing issue. Yeah, I think the takeaway here is that this tale teaches us that clear communication is really important. Um the bacon should have been in your hat. You should have led the goat home with the rope, not do that thing to the next thing you do. Also, can we just talk about the fact that how one-sided this relationship was? He just rolls up to Gretel's house and is like, I'm not giving you shit. Give me something. And then she does. So clearly Gretel likes him, loves him, probably, despite the fact that he's, dumber than a box of rocks. But right? It's just rolls up and is like, "Give me your shit." Give me something. I don't know. Like no kisses, no goo goo eyes, no like hand holding, just give me something. Give me take. Just wild. I agree, Curious. I thought he was prepping something with the taking before he gives something, but no, just absolute, box of rocks. Dumber than fried eggs tied to a post. It just why? Why are you like this? Yeah. Anyway, so yep, that's clever Hans for you. So despite everything, she must really love him, and even being pelted with animal eyes was not enough reason for her not to marry him. So the things we do for love, I guess. Okay. We're on to the next story. This one is called The Three Languages. And as a reminder, hydrate, snack, caffeinate, grab a snuggly blanket if you're listening to unwind and relax, and let's get started. There once lived in Switzerland an old count who had an only son, but he was very stupid. Was his name Hans? No, maybe. And could learn nothing. So his father said to him, Listen to me, my son. I can get nothing into your head, try as hard as I may. You must go away from here, and I will hand you over to a renowned professor for a whole year. At the end of the year, he came home again, and his father asked, Now, my son, what have you learnt? Father, I have learnt the language of dogs. Mercy on us, cried his father. Is that all you have learnt? I will send you away again to another professor in a different town. The youth was taken there and remained with this professor also for another year. When he came back, his father asked him again, My son, what have you learnt? He answered, I have learnt bird language. Then the father flew into a rage and said, Oh, you hopeless creature! Have you been spending all this precious time and learnt nothing? Aren't you ashamed to come into my presence? I will send you to a third professor, but if you learn nothing this time, I won't be your father any longer. The son stopped with the third professor in the same way for a whole year. And when he came home again and his father asked, My son, what have you learnt? He answered, Oh, welcome, Charlie's Paris. Charlie Perry's? Like, oh, like Charlie Perry. I get it. Awesome. The son stopped with the third professor in the same way for a whole year, and when he came home again and his father asked, My son, what have you learnt? He answered, My dear father, this year I have learnt frog language. Thereupon his father flew into a fearful passion and said, This creature is my son no longer. I turn him out of the house and command you to lead him into the forest and take his life. They led him forth, but when they were about to kill him, for pity's sake they could not do it, and let him go. Then they cut out the eyes and tongue of a fawn, and in order that they might take back proofs to the old count. There's a lot of deer that just get offed in this whole book for no reason. And it's very sad. Check out this. So this could be a woodblock, but it's probably an intaglio too, but the edges are really rough around the border of it. So
Drink water. Become
moist. Yep, you got it. Hydration.
Don't forget to stretch.
Good reminders. If you haven't done so, please stand up. Give yourself a nice big stretch. Yeah, that's the stuff. I will just keep reading. I'll forget. Maybe a little back crack. Let's see what we got. Ooh, couple. And maybe, there we go. So here we are. I'm assuming on the way he passed a swamp in which a number of frogs were croaking. So this is our dear blockhead of a son, the Count's son, which I may or may not call Hans because he has no other name. But I don't know. He learned languages of animals. I feel like he's a little bit smarter than our clever Hans was. So I'm being unnecessarily cruel. But this is a beautiful print here. Amazing detail. See how it's got these beautiful hatchings? This was probably either a lino cut or a woodcut block print. I'm going to guess it's woodcut just by looking at the edges and the texture. That's a very unique texture for printing. So as a friendly reminder, Arthur Rackham artwork, beautiful ink. So he inked the drawing. I really like how the frogs on the tree branch. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's like at least 11, 12 frogs in this picture. I really like it. I think he did a good job. I especially like this texture, the little divots to make the texture of his shirt. So that would have been like just the tip of the tool to nick it out like that. Anyway. The youth wandered about, and at length came to a castle, where he begged a night's lodging. Very well, said the lord of the castle. If you like to pass the night down there in the old tower, you may, but I warn you that it will be at risk of your life, for it is full of savage dogs. They bark and howl without ceasing, and at certain hours they must have a man thrown to them, and they devour him at once. Hey, yo, you're just gonna let a guest in your castle sleep with, like, feral dogs? Sure. Okay. Well, we'll just take that away. The whole neighborhood was distressed by the scourge, but no one could do anything to remedy it. But the youth was not a bit afraid and said, "Just let me go down to these barking dogs and give me something that I can throw to them. They won't do me any harm." As he would not have anything else, they gave him some food for the savage dogs, and took him down to the tower. The dogs did not bark at him when he entered, but ran round him wagging their tails in a most friendly manner, ate the food he gave them, and did not so much as touch a hair on his head. The next morning, to the surprise of everyone, he made his appearance again, and said to the lord of the castle, "The dogs have revealed to me in their own language why they live there and bring mischief to the country. They are enchanted and obliged to guard a great treasure, which is hidden under the tower, and will get no rest till it has been dug up. And how that has to be done I have also learnt from them." Everyone who heard this was delighted, and the lord of the castle said he would adopt him as a son if he accomplished the task successfully. He went down to the tower again, and as he knew how to set to work, he accomplished his task and brought out a chest full of gold. The howling of the savage dogs was from that time forward heard no more. They entirely disappeared, and the country was delivered from the scourge. After a time, he took it into his head to go to Rome. On the way, he passed a swamp in which a number of frogs were croaking. He listened, and when he heard that they were saying when he heard what they were saying, he became quite pensive and sad. At last he reached Rome, at a moment when the Pope had just died, and there was great doubt among the cardinals whom they ought to name as his successor. They agreed at last that the man to whom some divine miracle should be manifested ought to be chosen as Pope. Just as they had come to this decision, the young count entered the church, and suddenly 2 snow-white doves flew down and alighted on his shoulders. The clergy recognized in this the sign from heaven, and asked him on the spot whether he would be Pope. He was undecided, and knew not whether he was worthy of the post, but the doves told him that he might accept, and at last he said, "Yes." Thereupon he was anointed and consecrated, and so was fulfilled that he had heard from the frogs on the way, which had disturbed him so much, namely, that he should become Pope. Then he had to chant mass, and did not know one word of it, but the two doves sat upon his shoulders and whispered it to him. All right. Just sure. Um, can we get the professors that teach like animal languages to come out and say hi? That would be pretty awesome. I would like to learn dog, cat, maybe bird. If I can only learn 3, then I think those would cover most of my needs right there. I feel like this story teaches us that every skill, every person has a place in the world, right? And it's crucial to find where you belong. His father abandoned him. You need to learn to talk to rats, please. Okay. I mean I do like rodent infestation might be able to teach you. I'm not sure. I think they might speak rat, or Boo the rat, another amazing streamer, might be able to teach you the language if you ask nicely. Um, I think his father didn't want him just because what he learned didn't seem of worth, right? And I think there's a takeaway there that sometimes parents forget that their children are individuals and capable of making their own decisions. And for him, it was learning 3 languages that you never know when those were going to come in handy, and that those are life skills. So, and he abandoned him for it. I mean, more than abandoned him for it. He sent him out to be killed. I think that's a little over the top personally, but parents overreact to their children's educations all the time. Maybe not quite to the extreme of like, get out of my house and go be murdered. I feel like that's a little excessive, but here we are. Between chapters again, hydrate, snack, caffeinate if you need to, stretch if you need to. Today I am drinking the Element tea, or Element mango spice electrolyte water, and then my coffee is actually the Chike coffee powder, their protein powder, mixes into the to regular coffee deliciously. So you get a little protein with your coffee, man. It's good stuff. Mm. Thank you all for listening to me ramble. I am a weirdo, and I know that, and that's part of the reason I decided to start streaming. So, here we are. We are on to the fox and the cat, which, by the way, awesome image. So let's pull that up here. Look at this cat. He's like, oh, who dat? Who dat is? The texture on the tail, the beautiful wispy hairs coming out of his ears. This is great. Arthur, you rocked it out of the park with this one. I really like that, and especially all the detail around the leaves and the texture. Just a lot of good texture here. Good picture. All right. The Fox and the Cat. It happened once that the cat met Mr. Fox in the wood, and because she thought he is clever and experienced in all the ways of the world, she addressed him in a friendly manner. Good morning, dear Mr. Fox. How are you, and how do you get along in these hard times? The fox, full of pride, looked at the cat from head to foot for some time, hardly knowing whether he would deign to answer or not. At last he said, "Oh, you poor whisker wiper, you piebald fool, you starveling mouse hunter, what has come into your head? How dare you ask me how I am getting on? What sort of education have you had? How many arts are you master of?" "Only one," said the cat meekly. "And what might that one be?" asked the fox. "When the hounds run after me, I can jump into a tree and save myself." "Is that all?" said the fox. "I am master of 100 arts, and I have a sack full of cunning tricks in addition. But I pity you. Come with me, and I will teach you how to escape the hounds." Just then a huntsman came along with 4 hounds. The cat sprang trembling into a tree and crept stealthily up to the topmost branch, where she was entirely hidden by twigs and leaves. "Open your sack, Mr. Fox, open your sack," cried the cat, but the hounds had gripped him and held him fast. "Oh, Mr. Fox," cried the cat, "you with your 100 arts and your sack full of tricks are caught, while I with my one am safe. Had you been able to climb up here, not you would not have lost your life." Oof. Harsh lesson. Harsh cat. I think this is kind of one of those situations where even though the fox had a plethora of tricks, in the spur of the moment, when time caught up to him and he was caught by the hounds, instead of using any number of tricks which he only knew passably well, the cat was able to use the one trick which she had mastered. So perhaps spending the time to master each of those tricks, the fox would have been able to escape. So instead of learning too many things and becoming unable to use any of them, mastery of one. Now, there's a phrase that's like jack of all trades, master of none. Um, it is like, how does it go? It is better to be. There's a whole thing for it. Hold on, give me a second. There we go. Full quote. "A jack of all trades is a master of none, but some oftentimes better than a master of one." I feel like this is the opposite of what the moral was in The Cat and the Fox. The Cat and the Fox, the cat was a master of one trick that was so effective against the hounds that the fox had no shot of escaping. Um, So people think of jack of all trades, like that phrase, jack of all trades, master of none, as being bad. In that context, it's the inverse. The jack of all trades means you have many skills that can be helpful to you, um, and you can use them even if you don't have mastery over any of them. Unfortunately, that did not work out for the fox. So back to it. Da-da. Okay. Here we are, the 4 clever brothers. Ooh, okay. The 4 clever brothers. There was once a poor man who had 4 sons, and when they were grown up, he said to them, "Dear children, you must go out into the world now, for I have nothing to give you. You must each learn a trade and make your own way in the world." Hopefully not like Hans. So the 4 brothers took their sticks in their hands, So the 4 brothers took their sticks in their hands, bid their father goodbye, and passed out of the town gate. When they had walked some distance, they came to 4 crossroads, which led into 4 different districts. Then the eldest one said, "We must part here, but this day 4 years we will meet here again, having in the meantime done our best to make our fortunes." Then each one went his own way. The eldest met an old man who asked him where he came from and what he was going to do. "I want to learn a trade," he answered. Then the man said, "Come with me and learn to be a thief." "No," answered he. That is no longer considered an honest trade. And the end of that song would be that I should swing as the clapper in a bell. Oh, said the man, you need not be afraid of the gallows. I will only teach you how to take things no one else wants or knows how to get a hold of, and where no one can find you out. So he allowed himself to be persuaded, and under the man's instructions he became such an expert thief that nothing was safe from him which he had once made up his mind to have. The second brother met a man who put the same question to him as to what he was going to do in the world. I don't know yet, he answered. Then come with me and be a stargazer. It is the grandest thing in the world. Nothing is hidden from you. He was pleased with the idea and became such a clever stargazer that when he had learnt everything and wanted to go away, his master gave him a telescope and said, with this, you can see everything that happens in the sky and on earth, and nothing can remain hidden from you. The third brother was taken in hand by a huntsman who taught him everything connected with sport so well that he became a first-rate huntsman. On his departure, his master presented him with a gun and said, this gun will never miss. Whatever you aim at, you will hit without fail. The youngest brother also met a man who asked him what he was going to do. Wouldn't you like to be a tailor? He asked. I don't know about that, said the young man. I don't much fancy sitting cross-legged from morning till night, and everlastingly pulling a needle in and out, and pushing a flat iron. Dear, dear, said the man, what are you talking about? If you come to me, you will learn quite a different sort of tailoring. It is a most pleasant and agreeable trade, not to say most honorable. So he allowed himself to be talked over, and went with the man, who taught him his trade thoroughly. On his departure, he gave him a needle and said, with this needle you will be able to stitch anything together, be it as soft as an egg or as hard as steel, and it will become like a whole piece of stuff with no seam visible. When the 4 years which the brothers had agreed upon had passed, they met at the crossroads. They embraced one another and hurried home to their father. Well, said he, quite pleased to see them. Has the wind wafted you back to me again? They told him all that had happened to them, and that each had mastered a trade. They were sitting in front of the house under a big tree, and their father said, now, I will put you to the test and see what you can do. Then he looked up and said to his second son, there is a chaffinch's nest in the topmost branch of this tree. Tell me how many eggs there are in it. The stargazer took his glass and said, there are 5. His father said to the eldest, bring the eggs down without disturbing the birds sitting on them. The cunning thief climbed up and took the 5 eggs from under the bird so cleverly that it never noticed they were gone, and he gave them to his father. His father took them and put them one on each corner of the table and one in the middle, and said to the sportsman, you must shoot the 5 eggs through the middle at one shot. The sportsman leveled his gun and divided each egg in half at one shot, as his father desired. He certainly must have had some of the powder which shoots round the corner. Now it is your turn, said his father to the 4th son. You will sew the eggs together again, the shells and the young birds inside them, and you will do it in such a manner that they will be none the worse for the shot. The tailor produced his needle and stitched away as his father ordered. When he had finished, the thief had to climb up the tree again and put the eggs back under the bird without her noticing it. The bird spread herself over the eggs, and a few days later the fledglings crept out of the shell, and they all had a little red line round their throats where the tailor had sewn them together. Yes, said the old man to his sons, I can certainly praise your skill. You have learnt something worth knowing, and have made the most of your time. I don't know which of you to give the palm to. I only hope you may soon have a chance of showing your skill so that it may be settled. Not long after this, there was a great alarm raised in the country. The king's only daughter had been carried off by a dragon. Is that a dragon there? Hoping. I kind of... This will be later in the story, I'm sure. Oh yeah, he's just passed out. He's just chilling. They found the princess still on the rock, but the dragon was asleep with his head in her lap. Aw. She's like very pensive, but the dragon is just passed out. Long, squangly neck. Blah, 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 blah. That's cool. Okay. The king sorrowed for her day and night and proclaimed that whoever brought her back should marry her. The four brothers said to one another, "This would be an opportunity for us to prove what we can do," and they decided to go out together to deliver the princess. "I shall soon know where she is," said the stargazer as he looked through his telescope, and then he said, "I see her already. She is a long way from here. She is sitting on a rock in the middle of the sea, and the dragon is near, watching her." Then he went to the king and asked for a ship for himself and his brothers to cross the sea in search of the rock. They found the princess still on the rock, but the dragon was asleep with his head on her lap. The sportsman said, "I dare not shoot. I should kill the beautiful maiden." Po- he can hit anything he aims at. Like, okay, sure, I'll allow it. "Then I will try my luck," said the thief, and he stole her away from beneath the dragon. He did it so gently and skillfully that the monster never discovered it, but went snoring on. Full of joy, they hurried away with her to the ship and steered for the open sea, but the dragon, on waking, had missed the princess, and now came after them through the air, foaming with rage. Just as he was hovering over the ship and about to drop on them, the sportsman took aim with his gun and shot him through the heart. The monster fell down dead, but he was so huge that in falling he dragged the whole ship down with him. They managed to seize a few boards on which they kept themselves afloat. They were now in great straits, but the tailor, not to be outdone, produced his wonderful needle and put some great stitches into the boards and seated himself on them, collected all the floating bits of the ship. Then he stitched them all together so cleverly that in a very short time the ship was seaworthy again, and they sailed happily home. The king was overjoyed when he saw his daughter again, and he said to the four brothers, "One of you shall marry her, but which one you must decide among yourselves." An excited discussion then took place among them, for each one made a claim. The stargazer said, "Had I not discovered the princess, all your arts would have been in vain. Therefore, she is mine." The thief said, "What would have been the good of discovering her if I had not taken her from under the dragon? So she is mine." The sportsman said, "You as well as the princess would have been destroyed by the monster if my shot had not hit him. So she is mine." The tailor said, "And if I had not sewn the ship together with my skill, you would all have been drowned miserably. Therefore, she is mine." The king said, "Each of you has an equal right, but as you can't all have her, none of you shall have her. I will give every one of you half a kingdom as a reward." The brothers were quite satisfied with this decision, and they said, "It is better so than that we should quarrel over it." So each of them received half a kingdom, and they lived happily with their father for the rest of their days. Maybe my math is wrong, but half of a kingdom would mean two halves, and there are four brothers. Do they mean a quarter? A quarter of the kingdom? Perchance? I don't know. We shall see. It is about that time for ad break. I can postpone it. I'm gonna read one more story, and then we'll go on that ad break, and then we'll go from there. So let's see how long this is. I don't know how much time I can. Oh yeah, I can get that. I can knock that out. We'll do that. Aw, Tiger Faye. I just love that emote with the hearts. It's so cute. The Lady and the Lion. There was once a man who had to take a long journey, and when he was saying goodbye to his daughters, he asked what he should bring back to them. The eldest wanted pearls, the second diamonds, but the third said, "Dear father, I should like a singing, soaring lark." The father said, "Very well, if I can manage it, you shall have it." And he kissed all three and set off. He bought pearls and diamonds for the two eldest, but he had searched everywhere in vain for the singing, soaring lark, and this worried him, for his youngest daughter was his favorite child. Once his way led through a wood in the midst of which was a splendid castle. Near it stood a tree, and right up at the top he saw a lark singing and soaring. "Ah," he said, "I have come across you in the nick of time," and he called to his servant to dismount and catch the little creature. But as he approached the tree, a lion sprang out from underneath and shook himself and roared so that the leaves on the tree trembled. "Who dares to steal my lark?" said he. "I will eat up the thief." Then the man said, "I didn't know that the bird was yours. I will make up for my fault by paying a heavy ransom. Only spare my life." But the lion said, "Nothing can save you unless you promise to give me whatever first meets you when you get home. If you consent, I will give you your life and the bird into the bargain." But the man hesitated and said, "Suppose my youngest and favorite daughter were to come running to meet me when I go home?" But the servant was afraid and said, "Your daughter will not necessarily be the first to come to meet you. It might just as well be a cat or a dog." So the man let himself be persuaded, took the lark, and promised the lion for his own whatever first met him on his return home. When he reached home and entered his house, the first person who met him was none other than his youngest daughter. She came running up and kissed and caressed him, and when she saw that he had brought the singing, soaring lark, she was beside herself with joy. But her father could not rejoice. He began to cry and said, "My dear child, it has cost me dear, for I have had to promise you to a lion who will tear you in pieces when he has you in his power." And he told her all that had happened and begged her not to go, come what might. But she consoled him, saying, "Dear father, what you have promised must be performed. I will go, and will soon soften the lion's heart, so that I shall come back safe and sound." The next morning the way was shown to her, and she said goodbye and went confidently into the forest. This is giving Beauty and the Beast vibes a little bit. A little bit. Now the lion was an enchanted prince, who was a lion by day, and all his followers were lions too. But by night they resumed their human form. On her arrival, she was kindly received and conducted to the castle. When night fell, the lion turned into a handsome man, and their wedding was celebrated with due magnificence. And they lived happily together, sitting up at night and sleeping by day. One day he came to her and said, "Tomorrow there is a festival at your father's house to celebrate your eldest sister's wedding. If you would like to go, my lions shall escort you." She answered that she was very eager to see her father again, so she went away accompanied by the lions. There was great rejoicing on her coming, for they all thought that she had been torn to pieces and had long been dead. But she told them what a handsome husband she had and how well she fared, and she stayed with him as long as the wedding festivities lasted. Then she went back again into the wood. When the second daughter married and the youngest was again invited to the wedding, she said to the lion, "This time I will not go alone. You must come too." But the lion said it would be too dangerous, for if a gleam of light touched him, he would be changed into a dove and would have to fly about for 7 years. "Ah, ah, okay," she said. "Only go with me, and I will protect you and keep off every ray of light." So they went away together and took their little child with them too. They had a hall built with such thick walls that no ray could penetrate, and thither the lion was to retire when the wedding torches were kindled. But the door was made of fresh wood, which split and caused a little crack which no one noticed. Now the wedding was celebrated with great splendor. But when the procession came back from church with a large number of torches and lights, a ray of light no broader than a hair fell upon the prince, and the minute this ray touched him, he was changed. And his wife came in and looked for him. She saw nothing but a white dove sitting there. The dove said to her, "For 7 years I must fly about the world. Every seventh step I will let fall a drop of blood and a white feather which will show you the way, and if you will follow the track you can set me free." Thereupon the dove flew out of the door, and she followed it, and every seventh step it let fall a drop of blood and a little white feather to show her the way. So she wandered about the world and never rested till the 7 years were nearly past. Then she rejoiced, thinking that she would soon be free of her troubles, but she was still far from a release. One day, as they were journeying on in the accustomed way, the feather and the drop of blood ceased falling, and when she looked up, the dove had vanished. "Man cannot help me," she thought. So she climbed up the sun and said to it, "You shine upon all the valleys and mountain peaks. Have you not seen a white dove flying by?" "No," said the sun, "I have not seen one, but I will give you a little casket. Open it when you are in dire need." She thanked the sun and went on till night. When the moon shone out, "You shine all night," she said. "Over field and forest have you seen a white dove flying by?" "No," answered the moon, "I have seen none, but here is an egg. Break it when you are in great need." She thanked the moon and went on till the night wind blew upon her. "You blow among all the trees and leaves. Have you not seen a white dove?" she asked. "No," said the night wind, "I have not seen one, but I will ask the other 3 winds, who may perhaps have seen it." The east wind and the west wind came, but they had seen no dove. Only the south wind said, "I have seen the white dove. It has flown away to the Red Sea, where it has again become a lion, since the 7 years are over, and the lion is ever fighting with a dragon who is an enchanted princess." Then the night wind said, "I will advise you. Go to the Red Sea. You will find tall reeds growing on the right bank. Count them, and cut down the 11th. Strike the dragon with it, and then the lion will be able to master it, and both will regain human shape. Next, look round, and you will see the winged griffin, who dwells by the Red Sea. Leap upon its back with your beloved, and it will carry you across the sea. Here is a nut. Drop it when you come to mid-ocean. It will open immediately, and a tall nut tree will grow up out of the water, on which the griffin will settle. Could it not rest, it would not be strong enough to carry you across, and you will forget to drop the nut. It will let you fall into the sea." Then she journeyed on, and found everything as the night wind had said. She counted the reeds by the sea, and cut off the 11th, struck the dragon with it, and the lion mastered it. Immediately both regained human form. But when the princess who had been a dragon was free from enchantment, she took the prince in her arms, seated herself on the griffin's back, and carried him off. And the poor wanderer, again forsaken, sat down and cried. At last she took courage and said to herself, "Wherever the winds blow, I will go, and as long as cocks crow, I will search till I find him." So she went on a long, long way, till she came to the castle where the prince and princess were living. There she heard that there was to be a festival to celebrate their wedding. Then she said to herself, "Heaven help me!" And she opened the casket which the sun had given her. Inside it was a dress, as brilliant as the sun itself. She took it out, put it on, and went into the castle, where everyone, including the bride, looked at her with amazement. The dress pleased the bride so much that she asked if it was to be bought. "Not with gold or goods," she answered, "but with flesh and blood." The bride asked what she meant, and she answered, "Let me speak with the bridegroom in his chamber tonight." The bride refused. However, she wanted the dress so much that at last she consented. But the chamberlain was ordered to give the prince a sleeping draught. At night, when the prince was asleep, she was taken to his room. She sat down and said, "For 7 years I have followed you. I have been to the sun and the moon and the four winds to look for you. I have helped you against the dragon, and will you now quite forget me?" But the prince slept so soundly that he thought it was only the rustling of the wind among the pine trees. When morning came, she was taken away and had to give up the dress, and it had not helped her. She was very sad, and went out into the meadow and cried. As she was sitting there, she remembered the egg which the moon had given her. She broke it open, and out came a hen and 12 chickens, all of gold, who ran about chirping, and then crept back under their mother's wings. A prettier sight could not be seen. She got up and drove them about the meadow till the bride saw them from the window. The chickens pleased her so much that she asked if they were for sale, not for gold and goods, but for flesh and blood. "Let me speak with the bridegroom in his chamber once more." The bride said yes, intending to deceive her as before, but when the prince went to his room, he asked the chamberlain what all the murmuring and rustling in the night meant. Then the chamberlain told him how he had been ordered to give him a sleeping draught because a poor girl had been concealed in his room, and that night he was to do the same again. "Pour out the drink and put it near my bed," said the prince. At night she was brought in again, and when she began to relate her sad fortunes, she recognized the voice of his dear wife, sprang up, and said, "Now I am really free for the first time. All has been a dream, for the foreign princess cast a spell over me so that I was forced to forget you. But heaven in a happy hour has taken away my blindness." Then they both stole out of the castle, for they feared the princess's father, because he was a sorcerer. They mounted the griffin who bore them over the Red Sea, and when they got to mid-ocean, she dropped the nut. On the spot, a fine nut tree sprang up, on which the bird rested. Then it took them home, where they found their child grown tall and beautiful, and they lived happily till the end. Okay. Sure. Um, I think the story, the moral maybe is this is kind of an interesting through line. It's like a combination of the Beauty and the Beast, the classic tale. Father goes out, runs into the lion in this case, makes a bargain. Hey, I'll give you, you want the first thing that I see, it'll be fine. And then it just happens to be his daughter that he loves above all others. Um, so there's another story, East of Sun, West of the Moon. That's another like classic tale. Um, and that in this combination teaches us that loving someone for who they are. So despite him being a lion, despite him being a dove, she chose not to give up on him and worked and struggled to help him through his like curse, I guess I would say. He went through a lot. She went through a lot to get him back. Um, Random evil princess that happened to be a dragon. What did she do to be cursed to become a dragon? I don't know. We may never know. But with that note, um, I need to run an ad. I'm running out of snoozes, so I'm gonna go ahead and take a quick break here, and I'll be back in about 5. So I will see you all in just a few minutes. Be right back. Okay. We are back, and I'm going to read two more stories, and then we're going to find a lovely home to raid and go somewhere else and check out who's on and what's going on. So give me a second. Um, I'll put this up here on the side so I can see it. Okay. So we have, like I said, two more stories. I'm going to do the fox and the horse and then the blue light. And then we will go from there. Find a nice place to check out. So, what do we have over here? Let that figure itself out. So we have a very sad looking horse here. I mean, this is all pin work here. You know, he's got a little bit of dappled texture. He's got, you know, the very sad mane. It looks like the wind and the rain are rushing, falling on him a little bit. So I think he's looking a little sad. So let's find out more. Let's see. Kind of keep an eye on that. Okay. Da da da. Okay. So here we go. The fox and the horse. A peasant once had a faithful horse, but it had grown old and could no longer do its work. Its master grudged it food and said, "I can't use you any more, but I still feel kindly towards you. If you show yourself strong enough to bring me a lion, I will keep you to the end of your days. But away with you now out of my stable." And he drove it out into the open country. The poor horse was very sad. Understandable. The poor horse was very sad and went into the forest to get a little shelter from the wind and weather. There he met a fox who said, "Why do you hang your head and wander about in this solitary fashion?" "Alas," answered the horse, "avarice and honesty cannot live together. My master has forgotten all the service I have done him for these many years, and because I can no longer plow, he will no longer feed me, and he has driven me away." "Without any consideration?" asked the fox. "Only the poor consolation of telling me that if I was strong enough to bring him a lion, he would keep me. But he knows well enough that the task is beyond me." The fox said, "But I will help you. Just you lie down here and stretch your legs out as if you were dead." The horse did as he was told, and the fox went to the lion's den, not far off, and said, "There is a dead horse out there. Come along with me, and you will have a rare meal." The lion went with him, and when they got up to the horse, the fox said, "You can't eat it in comfort here. I'll tell you what. I will tie it to you, and you can drag it away to your den and enjoy it at your leisure." The plan pleased the lion, and he stood quite still, close to the horse, so the fox should fasten them together. But the fox tied the lion's legs together with the horse's tail, and twisted and knotted it so that it would be quite impossible for it to come undone. When he had finished his work, he patted the horse on the shoulder and said, "Pull, old gray, pull!" Then the horse sprang up and dragged the lion away. Behind him, the lion, in his rage, roared so that all the birds in the forest were terrified and flew away. But the horse let him roar, and never stopped till he stood before his master's door. When the master saw him, he was delighted and said to him, "You shall stay with me and have a good time as long as you live." And he fed him well till he died. I just, I mean, I don't know what to say. Okay. Here's the old knackered horse, rolling, lion screaming, birds a flying. Then the horse sprang up and dragged the lion away behind him. Like, what is he supposed to do with this live lion? Just, okay. The lion is probably ashamed that he was tricked by the fox and the horse. So that's if he lived. I have so many questions. There's just a lot of loose ends unresolved. This tale is about trusting your friends and helping others. Sure, maybe. I I think this is another one of those stories that uh you have to treat your animals well. You have a responsibility to feed them and care for them as long as they live. As soon as you are taking that responsibility, you need to take it seriously. Um, I think that animals have a way of surprising us. That would be my takeaway. It's like you could trust your friends. Yeah, the horse trusted the fox and it worked out well. Sometimes you can't though. And it's good to help others. Um, so maybe that's a through line. I don't know. It's kind of silly though, isn't it? Okay, let's find the next one here. So this will be our final tale for today. And this one is called The Blue Light. There was once a soldier who had served his king well and faithfully for many years. But on account of his many wounds, he could serve no longer. The king said, "You can go home now. I have no further need for you. I can only pay those who serve me." Capitalism! Sorry. The soldier did not know what to do for a living, and he went sadly away. He walked all day till he reached a wood where in the distance he saw a light. On approaching it, he found a house inhabited by a witch. "Pray, give me shelter for the night and something to eat and drink, or I shall perish, or I shall perish." Oh ho," she said. "Who gives anything to a runaway soldier, I should like to know? But I will be merciful and take you in if you will do something for me." "What is it?" asked the soldier. "I want you to dig up my garden tomorrow." The soldier agreed to this, and next day he worked as hard as he could, but he could not finish before evening. "I see," said the witch, "that you can do no more this evening. I will keep you one night more, and tomorrow you shall split up some logs for firewood." The soldier took the whole day over this task, and in the evening the witch proposed that he should again stay another night. You shall only have a very light task tomorrow," she said. "There is an old, dry well behind my house. My light, which burns blue and never goes out, has fallen into it, and I want you to bring it back." Next day the witch led him to the well and let him down in a basket. He found the light and made a sign to pull up, but when he was near the top, the witch put out her hand and wanted to take it from him. But he, seeing her evil design, said, "No, I will not give you the light till I have both feet safe on dry land again." The witch flew into a passion, let him fall back into the well again, and went away. The poor soldier fell on the damp ground without taking any harm, and the blue light burnt as brightly as ever. But what was the good of that? He saw that he could not escape death. He sat for time feeling very sad. Then happening to put his hand into his pocket, he found his pipe still half full. "This will be my last pleasure," he thought, as he lighted it at the blue light and began to smoke. When the cloud of smoke he made cleared off a little, a tiny man appeared before him, and asked, "What orders, master?" "What do you mean?" the soldier asked in amazement. "I must do anything that you command," said the little man. "Oh, if that is so," said the soldier, "get me out of this well first." The little man took him by the hand and led him through an underground passage, but the soldier did not forget to take the blue light with him. On the way, he showed the soldier all the treasures the witch had amassed there, and he took as much gold as he could carry. Then they reached the top. He said to the little man, "Now go, bind the witch and take her before the judge." Before long, she came by, riding at a furious pace on a tomcat and screaming at the top of her voice. The little man soon after appeared and said, "Everything is done as you commanded, and the witch hangs on the gallows. What further orders have you, master?" "Nothing at this moment," answered the soldier. "You can go home. Only be at hand when I call." Mm, one moment. I couldn't resist another piece of that chocolate. Delicious. The soldier went back to the town that he had left and ordered some new clothes. Then he went to the best inn and told the landlord to give him the best room. Also, awesome rendering of a witch rolling up on a cat just screaming. Yeah, that makes so much sense. It's an amazing picture though. Okay. When he had taken possession, he summoned the little man and said, "I served my king faithfully, but he sent me away to die of hunger. Now I will have my revenge." "What do you wish me to do?" asked the little man. "Late at night, when the princess is asleep in her bed, bring her, sleeping, to me, and I will make her do menial service for me." "It is an easy enough thing for me to do," said the little man, "but it will be bad business for you if it comes out." As the clock struck 12, the door sprang open, and the little man bore the maiden in. "Aha! There you are!" cried the soldier. "Set about your work at once. Fetch the broom and sweep the floor." When she had finished, he sat down and ordered her to take his boots off. Then he threw them at her and made her pick them up and clean them. She did everything he ordered without resistance, silently and with half-shut eyes. At the first cock crow, the little man carried her away to the royal palace and put her back in bed. In the morning, when the princess got up, she went to her father and told him she had had an extraordinary dream. "I was carried through the streets at lightning speed and taken to the room of a soldier whom I had to serve as a maid and do all kinds of menial work. I had to sweep the room and clean his boots. Of course, it was only a dream, and yet I am as tired this morning as if I had done it all." The dream could not have been true," said the king, "but I will give you a piece of advice. Fill your pocket with peas and cut a little hole in it. Then, if you are carried away again, you will drop out and leave a track on the road." When the king said this, the little man was standing by, invisible, and heard it all. At night, when he again carried off the princess, the peas fell out of her pocket, but they were useless to trace her by, for the cunning little man had scattered peas all over the streets. Again, the princess had to perform her menial duties till cock-crow. The next morning, the king sent out people who were to find the track, but they were unable to do so because in every street the poor children were picking up peas and saying, "It must have rained peas in the night." "We must devise a better plan," said the king. "Keep your shoes on when you go to bed, and before you come away from the place where you are taken, hide one of them. I shall be sure to find it." The little man heard this plan also, and when the soldier told him to bring the princess again, he advised him to put it off. He said he knew no further means against their craftiness, and if the shoe were found, it would be very dangerous for his master. "Do what I tell you," answered the soldier. And for the third time the princess was brought and made to work like a servant. But before leaving she hid one of her shoes under the bed. Next morning the king ordered the whole town to be searched for his daughter's shoe, and it was soon found in the soldier's room. He himself, at the request of the little man, had gone outside the gates, but before long he was seized and thrown into prison. In his flight, he had forgotten his greatest treasures, the blue light and his gold. He had but one ducat in his pocket. As he stood at his window in the prison, loaded with chains, he saw one of his comrades going by. He tapped on the pane and said, "Be so good as to fetch me the little bundle I left behind at the inn, and I will give you a ducat." His comrade hurried off and brought him the bundle. As soon as the soldier was alone, he lighted his pipe and summoned the little man. "Don't be afraid," he said to his master. "Go where they take you, and let what will happen. Only take the blue light with you." Next day, a trial was held, and although the soldier had done no harm, the judge sentenced him to death. When he was led out to execution, he asked a last favor for the king. "What is your wish?" asked the king. "That I may smoke a last pipe." "You may smoke 3," answered the king, "but don't imagine that I will therefore grant you your life." Then the soldier drew out his pipe and lighted it with the blue light. As soon as a few rings of smoke arose, the little man appeared with a little cudgel in his hand and said, "What is my master's command? Strike the false judge and his minions to the ground, and do not spare the king either for all his cruelty to me." Then the little man flew about like lightning, zig, zag, hither and thither, and whomever he touched with his cudgel fell to the ground and dared not move. The king was now seized with alarm, and begging on his knees that his life might be spared, he rendered up his kingdom and gave his daughter to the soldier to be his wife. Okay. It's just, hmm. Um, I suppose the takeaway from this story is that I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss. I mean, he went through a lot. The king should have taken better care of his employee. Um, I don't think it was right or morally right for the soldier to punish the daughter, the princess, um, for her father's, misdeeds. I mean, he got one over on the witch. That's kind of cool. Um, Walked away with money and the blue light and was able to escape. Um, I feel like all of the cleverness was in the pixie that he manifested through using the blue light and his smoking pipe. I He survived another day, I guess. Um he brought justice to the witch. He brought justice to the false judge who condemned him to death for just making the daughter have to do menial chores. There, I'm not sure what the lesson was. I know it's a Hungarian story that they found in the 1800s. So it was an interesting story. The blue light. If anyone has any thoughts on it, feel free to let me know. I think let's throw this over here. Let's see who's available to go say hi to. We can go say hi to, well, Tiger Faye, who was just here, is doing some art. It'd be kind of nice to go back over and say hi. Um, it looks like there's some various people doing some gaming. There's some Dungeons and Dragons, Voices of the Void, Grand Theft Auto. I think that's a little too over the top right now. Teamfight Tactics, um, Monster Hunter, Monster Hunter. A lot of people playing Monster Hunter right now. Um, Evening Stars just chatting. I think we'll go visit my friend Tiger Faye. So, all of you lovely people, grab your hats and let's get ready to go. Let's go say hi to Tiger Faye. Okay, let's go say hi. All aboard, choo choo, the raid train. Um, let's go. Yeah. Okay, everybody's on board. Let's go say hi.